You ever think that helping someone is the right thing to do, the kind human thing, until you realize that your kindness is being used against you? I live next to a single mom and her two daughters, and I've done everything for them: fixing cars, lending tools, opening doors when her teenage daughter locks herself out. I thought we were neighbors, maybe even friends, until I saw the truth. To her, I was nothing until she needed me. And one day, I stopped helping. What happened next? You won't believe. I wake up to the soft morning sunlight filtering through the blinds, casting long, thin lines across my kitchen floor. The coffee maker hums quietly, filling the room with the familiar smell of bitter warmth. I stand there, holding my mug in both hands, watching the steam rise and curl like tiny ghosts that vanish before I can touch them. Across the way, the old house, the one I rent out a portion of, sits quiet and still. From this distance, it looks like any ordinary home, but I know better. I know the lives unfolding inside, the stories, the dramas, the small, constant annoyances that make it more than just a house. I moved into this house several years ago, drawn by the idea of a comfortable life and a little piece of privacy for myself. The upstairs apartment, my little side project, as I like to think of it, was fully separate, with its own entrance, its own tiny kitchen, its own little patch of sunlight. I never imagined I'd form a relationship with the tenants as close as this. It started simply, a single mom in need of a place, to daughters following her like shadows. She seemed tired, but resilient. The girls, 16 and 6, were worlds apart in personality, but both had that spark, that restless energy that makes you want to watch them carefully, to see if they'll land softly or stumble. From the very beginning, I made a choice. I would not be just a landlord. I would be something else, someone who helps, someone who cares. It started small. When their car broke down, I lent a hand. I didn't expect anything in return. I like seeing the mother's eyes light up when she realized she didn't have to figure everything out alone. I liked the girl's gratitude, even the shy smiles of the little one who always seemed 2 steps behind, trying to keep up with her older sister. It didn't take long for the teenage daughter to become a presence in my life that I hadn't anticipated. 16, tall, with an attitude that sometimes bordered on indifferent, she had this way of drifting past me like I didn't exist. And yet, almost every week without fail, she would lock herself out. It started as an occasional inconvenience. I would hear the soft buzz of the doorbell, glance out, and there she would be, hair messy from the pillow, jacket half buttoned, cheeks pink from the cold. And I would open the door, always, even if I was mid-meeting, even if I had a deadline breathing down my neck, even if I just wanted a quiet moment to sip my coffee. There's a strange rhythm to it. She forgets the key. She freezes outside. I come to the rescue. Over time, it became predictable and frustrating. I am honest about it. I don't mind helping. I like helping. I like being needed. But I also notice the pattern. When she walks past me on the way to school, or when she's outside with friends, she barely acknowledges me. Eyes straight ahead, headphones in, a slight tilt of her head as if I'm air, as if the countless times I've opened that door for her never happened. And the mother is aware. She's apologetic, always. I'll talk to her, she says. I'll make sure she remembers. And she tries. I see her trying. But teenagers are like storms with no warning signs. You can try to predict them, guide them, shelter yourself from the worst, but ultimately, you're at the mercy of their whims. Still, I keep helping. At first, I tell myself it's just about being a good neighbor, a good person. There's a satisfaction in watching them feel relief, in seeing the mother smile when she realizes I've gone out of my way for her family. It feels right. It feels like the world is small, manageable, connected, but there's something gnawing at me, something subtle, a sense of being used. A sense that the moment the door is closed and I'm just another background fixture in her life, my efforts are invisible. She only notices me when the door is locked, when the key is missing, when she needs me. Otherwise, I am nothing. I am air. I remember the first time I realized it. She walked past me one afternoon, sun warm on my skin, sweat prickling at my temples from yard work. I said hello. Just a simple, hey, good morning, nothing more. She didn't flinch. Didn't even glance in my direction. I repeated it. Still nothing. My voice falters, just a whisper of annoyance now, tinged with disbelief. I feel the blood rush to my cheeks, a mix of embarrassment and indignation. And then, 2 days later, she's at my door, smiling, asking me to open it. The same girl who ignored me like I didn't exist now beams at me like I'm a hero. The dichotomy is sharp, almost painful. It stings. I start noticing small things. The way she talks to her younger sister. The little inconsistencies in her attitude. The way she seems to weigh people, deciding whether they are worth her attention. It's fascinating and infuriating. I can see the teenager forming, the layers of her personality stacking, curling, twisting. And in the middle of it, I exist. Only when convenient. My days start revolving around them more than I intended. I work from home, which gives me flexibility, but also makes it impossible to ignore the pattern. I'm here, always present, always available, yet often invisible. I begin to question my own motives. Why do I help? Why do I open the door, drop the tools, lend a hand? Is it out of kindness? Or is it out of hope? Hope that I'll be acknowledged, seen, appreciated? Sometimes when I sit alone in the living room after helping them, I sip my coffee slowly, staring out at the empty driveway, imagining the conversations that never happen, the thanks that never come, the smiles that are only temporary. I remind myself, it's not about recognition. It's about being the kind of person I want to be. That's what I tell myself, but deep down, a seed of frustration has planted itself. It grows quietly, almost imperceptibly, until it's a constant hum at the edge of my awareness. It whispers every time I hear the doorbell, every time I see her face at the window, every time I pass her in the yard. Why do you keep helping when she doesn't care? It asks. I try to shrug it off. I really do. I remind myself of the mother's struggles, of the younger daughter's innocence, of the fact that life isn't fair, that children aren't perfect, that love isn't always reciprocated. And still, the hum persists. This is the beginning. The first chapter in a story that will test my patience, my morality, my willingness to continue being the person I thought I was. A story that will force me to question whether kindness is always rewarded, or whether sometimes it's just another tool for someone else's convenience. And as I pour the last drop of coffee into my cup, I hear it again. The faint buzz of the doorbell. I know who it is. The teenage girl, locked out once more. My stomach tightens, a mixture of exasperation and a strange, unyielding duty. I glance at my watch, take a deep breath, and push the door open. Here we go again. The morning sun spills through the leaves outside, casting dappled shadows across the driveway. I hear the familiar click of a lock, the faint shuffle of sneakers against concrete, and I know before I even glance out the window who it is. The teenage girl, her hair still messy from the pillow. A backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder stands at the bottom of the stairs to her apartment. Again, I let out a slow breath, setting down my coffee mug. I've learned that exasperation and resignation can coexist. There's a rhythm to this now, almost musical, if you squint at it in a certain way. Door locks, footsteps, doorbell, sigh. My footsteps across the kitchen tiles, the creak of the stairs as I open the door. It repeats like a loop, like some absurd dance we're trapped in, yet she seems blissfully unaware of it. I go to the door, half expecting her to glance up, maybe smile, maybe apologize, maybe even acknowledge the countless times this scenario has played out before. But no, she's absorbed in her phone, thumbs moving fast, lips murmuring silently to herself. She's in her own world, and I'm background noise. Hey, I say, trying again. A casual greeting, easy, nothing heavy. She doesn't even look up. I pause, a tiny sting of irritation threading through me. It's subtle, but it's there. After all, I've given hours of my life to help her, to make her life easier in this tiny, contained way. And yet, I am invisible until the key is missing, until the problem demands my intervention. I open the door, letting her slip inside without a word, without thanks, without acknowledgement. My hands linger on the doorknob a second too long, a silent protest. The mother isn't around today, which makes the dynamic even more stark. No mediating voice, no gentle reminder to appreciate what's being offered. Just me. And her .it becomes almost comedic after a while. Monday morning, the same scene. Tuesday, the same. Sometimes Wednesday doubles up. She forgets both mornings and afternoons. I start keeping a mental log, though I'd never admit it aloud. Monday, locked out. Tuesday, locked out. Thursday, locked out twice. Friday, locked out again. Friends ask me why I put up with it. Why do you let her do this to you? They ask, and I shrug. Because she's a kid, I say. Because her mother struggles. Because it's not about me. But I notice something, a little crack in the armor of my resolve. Each time she ignores me walking past, each time she doesn't even glance up, that crack widens. I catch myself muttering under my breath, "You wouldn't even look at me if you weren't locked out." I hate that thought, but it won't leave. There are mornings when I'm in the middle of work, and the doorbell buzzes, high-pitched, urgent. I glance at the clock. 15 minutes until my meeting. 30 minutes until a client call. I can feel my blood pressure rising, my brain ticking through a million excuses. And yet, somewhere deep down, I move. I get up. I go to the door. I open it. The teenage girl smiles. Finally, just for a second, a small flash of gratitude, fleeting, like sunlight breaking through clouds. And I think, that's why I do it. That's why I put up with the repetitive, draining ritual. That tiny, fragile acknowledgement is enough to keep me going, week after week, month after month. Then came winter. Snow piled high against the sidewalk. I see fingers stretching across the driveway. I'm working from home, typing furiously, deadline looming, coffee cooling in its mug. The doorbell rings, shrill and insistent. I look outside and there she is, barely shivering, lips pink from the cold, hair flattened under a hood. She waves, smiling. I feel a pang of something: pity, obligation, frustration, all at once. I walk down the steps, boots crunching in the snow. "Hey," I say lightly, hoping to inject warmth into the cold morning. She beams, a practiced, effortless smile. And I realize once again she's only warm toward me when she needs me. The door opens. The chill rushes in, and I feel a sense of resignation, and yet also a strange satisfaction. I've done it, again, and as I watch her step inside, shaking the snow off her backpack, I think, one day, this pattern might break. One day, maybe she'll remember. Or maybe not. I begin to notice the little things. The way she walks past me when I'm in the yard. The way she laughs with her friends, pointing at the sky, oblivious to my presence. I am there, a constant, reliable force, yet completely invisible. When convenience isn't required, it gnaws at me. I catch myself in mirrors in the reflection of windows, asking, why do I care so much? Why does it sting? And the honest answer is, because I want to matter. Because I want to be more than a tool, more than a convenient hand. I talk to the mother about it. She nods, understanding, apologetic. She tries to guide her daughter, reminding her of manners, reminders about keys, about courtesy. But teenagers, they are storms contained in fragile forms. You can anticipate them, predict them, and yet, they will always surprise you. And I realize, the patterns I see aren't accidents. They are habits forming, lessons in independence, but also lessons in boundaries. And perhaps it's time I start noticing the lessons for myself. It's Friday morning, and I swear the world has a cruel sense of humor. I'm at my desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard, eyes fixed on the screen, when I hear it, the faint buzz of the doorbell. My stomach tightens. I take a deep breath, counting silently to 10, reminding myself of the rules I've set for this tiny dance. Patience first, kindness second, frustration third, but hidden deep. I glance at the clock. 30 minutes until my call. 45 until the next one. If I go now, I'll be late. But if I don't, well, she's outside, cold, shivering, waiting. I step onto the porch, the morning air biting at my cheeks, turning them pink. There she stands, hands stuffed in her pockets, hoodie pulled tight over her head, the backpack slung lazily over one shoulder. She glances up, sees me, and I can practically see the gears in her head turning. Do I need help? Yes, smile. And there it is. The smile, bright, innocent, calculated, perfect. I open the door, letting her step inside, and I feel a twinge of irritation. Always the smile. Only when there's a problem. Only when she needs me. Invisible when convenient, visible when necessary. As she steps past me, brushing by my arm without acknowledgement, I feel a pang of resentment mixed with guilt. I've tried to quiet it, tried to remind myself, she's just a teenager. Don't take it personally. But the words taste bitter in my mouth. Later that day, I see the mother at the grocery store. We exchange polite nods, small talk about the weather, about groceries. I hesitate, then mention the recurring lockouts, careful not to sound accusatory. She forgets, she admits, eyes downcast. I try to remind her, but, you know teenagers, they forget, they ignore, they don't listen until it's important. I nod, understanding, but inside, I feel that old familiar frustration. The pattern is clear, yet no one seems to notice it fully except me. The tiny, unnoticed labor I perform week after week. The constant readiness to drop everything. It's a Saturday, and the comedy of repetition hits its peak. She manages to lock herself out twice before noon. The first time, I'm in the middle of a project, headphones in, music masking the real world. The doorbell rings, ding, ding, ding. I remove the headphones, sigh, and make my way to the door. Hey, I say lightly. She grins. Perfectly polite. Locked out again, she says. Yes again, I mutter, trying to inject humor into the monotony. The second time, she calls her mother from the sidewalk. The mother groans, apologetic, rushing down the stairs in slippers, hands full of groceries. There's a flurry of activity, a dance of apologies and laughs, and I watch from the porch, a silent observer in my own home. The ridiculousness of it all strikes me then. The repetition, the absurdity, the quiet hum of life going on while I serve as a revolving door of convenience. And yet, I can't help but smile at the chaos. There's a strange warmth in being needed, even if it comes wrapped in irritation. That night, sitting in the quiet living room, I reflect. I've kept track of every lockout, every trip to the door, every sigh. I think about why I do it. Is it kindness? Obligation? Desire for recognition? The answer is complicated. It's all of it. But there's also a lesson in the monotony. Sometimes kindness is tested not in grand gestures, but in the repeated, mundane, invisible tasks. Sometimes patience is measured not by endurance of storms, but by willingness to open doors over and over, without applause, without acknowledgement, yet the frustration lingers. I notice it creeping into my thoughts, the invisible labor, the taken for granted acts, the lack of awareness of my presence until convenience demands it. I ask myself, how long will I continue? How much is too much? I start noticing not just her behavior, but my own responses. The sigh before I move, the small clenching of fists before I answer the door, the mental tally of how often I've done this, and how rarely I've been seen. It's a shift from pure patience to reflection, from service to awareness, from automatic action to conscious choice. And though the door will buzz tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, I know that this small recognition of my own limits will influence what comes next. The following Monday feels heavier than usual. The teenage girl locks herself out not once, but 3 times before lunch. I'm in the middle of preparing a presentation, and each buzz of the doorbell feels like a needle piercing the quiet bubble I've tried to create around my work. I close my eyes, mutter a sigh, and push back from my desk. My boots crunch against the driveway as I make my way to the door, snowflakes drifting lazily down around me. Sticking to my coat and eyelashes, she's leaning against the railing this time, feet crossed, scrolling on her phone, completely unbothered by the chill or the repeated intrusion into my day. Her hair's a mess, sticking out from her hoodie in random angles, cheeks flushed pink from the cold. I open the door, and she steps inside without a word of thanks. My stomach knots. I can feel the tension coil tight, ready to spring. Thanks, I mutter quietly, more to myself than to her. She looks up briefly, gives a small smile, then turns back to her phone, oblivious. I'm struck again by the disparity between the effort I pour into helping her and the almost mechanical nature of her responses. She notices me only when she needs me, and even then, she offers the minimum acknowledgement required to get what she wants. Later that day, the mother stops by my door. She's holding groceries in both arms, apologetic eyes meeting mine. I can't believe it happened again, she says. She's been so forgetful lately. I'll talk to her, I promise. I nod, forcing a smile, but inside the frustration simmers. I've been patient, I've helped her countless times, and yet the behavior doesn't change. The same patterns repeat week after week, and I can't help but wonder if my kindness is being treated as a given. An invisible constant that exists only for her convenience. By midweek, my internal conflict deepens. I start to calculate the hours I've spent getting up, going to the door, unlocking it, letting her in, returning to my desk, all the while watching the little window of my own life shrink under the weight of repeated obligations. It's not just time, it's mental space, emotional bandwidth. the subtle depletion of my energy that I hadn't realized until now. Thursday is a particularly cold day. Icicles hang like glass daggers from the eaves, and the wind cuts through my coat like a knife. The doorbell rings yet again. I glance at my laptop, open tabs waiting, deadlines looming, emails stacking like bricks in my inbox. And yet, something inside me compels me to move. I pull on my boots, shrug into my coat, and step outside. She's standing there, hands shoved into pockets, shivering slightly despite the layers she wears. I notice the way she tilts her head as she looks at me, an unspoken calculation in her eyes. Will she need me? Will she have to wait if I don't move quickly enough? The dynamic is unmistakable, almost mechanical. I feel a mixture of irritation and pity, a tug of war between empathy and exhaustion. I unlock the door. She steps in, warm air brushing past me, and I feel a pang of resentment I can't fully articulate. She offers a small smile, fleeting and careful, as if she knows she has to perform this tiny gesture of gratitude, and then she disappears down the hallway toward her apartment. The brief acknowledgement vanishes, leaving me standing in the kitchen, wondering why it matters so much that she even notices me. The week stretches on, and I begin to observe patterns I hadn't consciously recognized before. Her younger sister, 6 years old, is polite, curious, aware of my presence. She waves, she says hello, she thanks me when I open the door. The contrast between the two girls is stark, almost painfully so. The older one, with her teenage indifference, seems to exist in a bubble where I am irrelevant unless she's in immediate need. It's a lesson in human behavior, a study in entitlement, and a mirror reflecting my own expectations and frustrations. By Friday, I start to question the nature of my own reactions. Why do I allow this cycle to continue? Why do I get up each time? Why do I step outside into the cold? Why do I extend help to someone who barely acknowledges me? The answer is tangled with empathy, habit, and an internalized desire to do what I consider right, even if it comes at the expense of my own comfort and time. And yet, there is a seed of change forming, a subtle awareness that perhaps this pattern cannot go on forever without consequence. Saturday brings a new twist. She locks herself out again, but this time she hesitates at the door, looking around as if aware that the routine might not play out as usual. I notice it instantly, the slight pause before her hand reaches for the doorbell, the flicker of uncertainty in her expression. For the first time, I feel the weight of possibility. What if I don't open the door immediately? What if she has to wait? What if she experiences the consequences of her repeated carelessness firsthand? The doorbell buzzes. I take a deep breath, the cold air filling my lungs, and I make my choice. Not yet, not this time. She waits on the porch, glancing toward me occasionally, the smile absent now, replaced by a flicker of impatience, maybe frustration. I sit back at my desk, hands hovering over the keyboard, listening to the quiet hum of her movement outside. Time stretches, and I feel a mixture of guilt, resolve, and a strange sense of anticipation. She is learning, whether she knows it or not, that I am not an infinite resource, that my help is not to be taken for granted. Hours pass. She finally retreats to the side of the building, waiting for her mother to return home. I am left with the quiet of my own space, the fading sunlight across the floor, and a growing understanding of boundaries, patience, and the hard lessons of empathy. It is exhausting, and yet enlightening. I realize that my role is not merely to serve, but to teach, to set limits, to recognize the subtle interplay between kindness and self-respect. My patience has been tested, my boundaries nudged, and my perception of human behavior sharpened. I understand now that repeated acts of kindness are not always met with gratitude, that invisibility is sometimes the cost of being reliable, and that the line between empathy and self-erasure is thinner than I had ever imagined. And as I watch the teenage girl retreat down the sidewalk, I know that the next lockout, whenever it comes, will bring with it a new challenge, one that will force me to confront the delicate balance between generosity and self-preservation. The week comes to a close, and I find myself reflecting on the pattern that has dominated my mornings and afternoons for months. The teenage girl has locked herself out so many times I've lost count, each instance slightly different, each one testing my patience, my empathy, and my sense of fairness. It's no longer just a small inconvenience. It's a persistent rhythm that dictates the flow of my life. Saturday morning arrives, gray and cold, a thin drizzle falling from the sky. I hear the familiar click of her shoes against the pavement, the faint scuff of sneakers on the wet concrete, and I know immediately who it is. My hands tighten around my coffee mug, my mind weighing the decision I've been contemplating silently for weeks. Do I get up? Do I open the door? Or do I finally let this consequence unfold without my intervention? She arrives at the door, looking slightly embarrassed, yet still smiling as if the pattern hasn't been established, as if my repeated acts of kindness are endless and unquestionable. I glance at my watch. I'm in the middle of editing a critical report, a deadline looming that could affect my entire week. The rational part of me argues, "You've helped enough. You've always been there." She needs to learn responsibility. Her smile falters slightly when she notices me hesitate. For the first time, I see a flicker of doubt in her eyes, a brief recognition that perhaps I am not an automatic fixture in her life, that the world doesn't simply bend to her convenience. I stand, hand hovering near the door handle, a decision forming quietly within me. And no words escape my lips. I don't rush to unlock it. I don't move an inch. She fidgets, glancing around, uncertain, the smile disappearing completely. I can almost feel the gears in her mind turning, a realization settling in that perhaps my help isn't infinite. Minutes stretch into what feels like an eternity, the drizzle dampening my hair and coat, the rhythmic tapping of her sneakers on the wet steps like a metronome counting the seconds of silent tension. Inside, I hear the faint hum of my computer, the work I've been trying to complete demanding attention. I breathe slowly, allowing the stillness to settle over me, feeling the strange combination of guilt, relief, and resolve coalesce within. I've made my choice. For the first time, I am no longer an automatic responder to her needs. For the first time, the boundaries I've felt but ignored are clearly drawn. Hours pass. I continue with my work, occasionally glancing at the window, watching her figure shift outside. The mother returns home eventually, keys jingling in her pocket, groceries in hand. She opens the door for her daughter, a rush of apologies exchanged, laughter and scolding mingling as the teenage girl finally steps inside. I remain behind the window, observing silently. The scene unfolds without me, and in that moment, a strange clarity settles over me. Kindness is not entitlement, and visibility is not guaranteed. I realize then that all the repeated lockouts, all the ignored greetings, all the tiny, unnoticed sacrifices have led to this point, not a failure of empathy, but a lesson in limits. I've learned that generosity can coexist with self-respect, that patience must be tempered with boundaries, and that the invisible labor of daily life can be recognized internally even when it is not acknowledged externally. As evening falls, I sit by the window, sipping cold coffee, the sky bruised with shades of purple and gray. The teenage girl moves about inside her apartment, her presence familiar but no longer commanding my immediate attention. I feel a sense of peace mingled with lingering frustration, a reminder that human behavior is unpredictable, messy, and often ungrateful. And yet, the lesson is clear. Being kind does not require being endless. Being reliable does not mean being invisible. And caring for others does not require the erasure of oneself. I have learned the limits of my patience, the boundaries of my kindness, and the quiet strength that comes from choosing when and how to act. The pattern will continue. The teenage girl will undoubtedly lock herself out again. But the rhythm has changed. The stakes have shifted. I am no longer merely the responder. I am the observer, the decision maker, the keeper of my own boundaries. And in that, there is power, clarity, and a cautious hope that the next chapter. It's a gray Thursday morning, the kind where the sky feels heavy and the air carries a damp chill. I'm at my desk, surrounded by paperwork, laptop glowing, deadlines looming like storm clouds. The doorbell rings. Immediately, I know who it is. My stomach tightens, a familiar mix of irritation, exhaustion, and reluctant responsibility. The teenage girl has locked herself out again. I take a deep breath, remembering all the mornings, all the afternoons, all the times I dropped my own plans to rescue her from her carelessness. Every smile, every thank you, every fleeting moment of acknowledgement has been ephemeral. She sees me only when convenient, invisible otherwise. I stand, boots crunching on the wet pavement, hands gripping the doorframe. She's smiling, hoodie half-zipped, backpack slung over one shoulder, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind my calm exterior. She's expecting me to move, to open the door, to perform the familiar ritual. I don't. I take a step back, letting her wait. The seconds stretch into minutes. I watch her shuffle from foot to foot, glance at her phone, mutter under her breath. The smile fades. Her shoulders slump slightly, the realization dawning that I am not here to serve her convenience anymore. For the first time, I see her as a teenager forced to confront the consequences of her own carelessness. Inside, I feel a mixture of triumph and guilt. I've crossed an invisible line, asserting my boundaries, reclaiming a sense of self that had been eroded by months of repeated invisibility. And yet, I can't help but worry. Will she hate me? Will the mother be upset? Is this cruelty, or is it justice in its quietest form? Minutes pass. I sit back at my desk pretending to type, watching her from the corner of my eye. She rings the doorbell again, a bit more insistently this time, and I still do nothing. She knocks softly, then a little harder, her youthful patience beginning to fray. The mother returns from her morning errands, groceries in hand. She sees her daughter at the door, and then notices me, standing by the window, unmoving. What's going on? She asks, surprise and confusion in her voice. She locked herself out, I say simply. Again, but I'm not opening it this time. Her eyes widen. You're not? No, I reply, voice calm but firm. I've helped enough. She needs to learn responsibility. She can't expect me to drop everything every time she forgets her keys. The mother hesitates, clearly torn between gratitude for my past help and concern for her daughter's feelings. I see the conflict on her face, the uncomfortable truth that sometimes children must face consequences, and that my patience has limits. The teenage girl bangs on the door lightly, pleading now, her voice rising. Please, I didn't mean to. I do not move. I feel a strange power in the stillness, a quiet assertion of my own boundaries. I feel human again, visible on my own terms, no longer a tool to be used at whim. Hours pass. She waits outside, rain beginning to fall, turning her hair into a soaked mess, dripping onto the concrete. I watch from inside, guilt gnawing at the edges of my conscience. The mother frowns, muttering apologies and scolding softly, finally letting her daughter in from the side door, the lock barely used. Inside, the teenage girl's expression is a mixture of frustration, embarrassment, and confusion. She glances at me for the first time with genuine recognition, not for convenience, not for a request, but as if seeing me as a real person with limits. I watch silently, letting the lesson settle in. I realize then that this is a turning point. The repetition, the expectation, the invisibility, it all culminates in this moment of confrontation. And though it is uncomfortable, tense, and filled with subtle conflict, I feel a quiet sense of pride. I have set a boundary. I have taught a lesson in responsibility, even if it was not pleasant for anyone involved. Evening falls, and the house is quiet once more. The teenage girl has retreated to her room, probably texting her friends, probably replaying the morning over and over in her mind. The mother lingers in the kitchen, awkwardly apologetic, clearly processing the event herself. I sip my tea, feeling a mix of relief and lingering tension. This act of refusal, simple as it was, has shifted something fundamental. I am no longer merely the ever-ready helper. I am a person with limits, with boundaries, with the right to be acknowledged and respected. I can see it in the teenage girl's eyes. A seed of understanding has been planted. However grudgingly, I also understand something about myself. Kindness does not require invisibility. Helping others is noble, but not at the cost of erasing your own presence. And for the first time in months, I feel seen, not through gratitude, but through the recognition of my autonomy. As I close the blinds for the night, I know the lockouts will continue. The teenage girl will likely forget her keys again. But the pattern has changed. She will think twice. I will no longer be invisible. And in that, there is a quiet victory, a hard-earned lesson in empathy, patience, and the courage to stand firm even when it is uncomfortable. It's a gray Thursday morning, the kind where the sky feels heavy and the air carries a damp chill. I'm at my desk, surrounded by paperwork, laptop glowing, deadlines looming like storm clouds. The doorbell rings. Immediately, I know who it is. My stomach tightens, a familiar mix of irritation, exhaustion, and reluctant responsibility. The teenage girl has locked herself out again. I take a deep breath, remembering all the mornings, all the afternoons, all the times I dropped my own plans to rescue her from her carelessness. Every smile, every thank you, every fleeting moment of acknowledgement has been ephemeral. She sees me only when convenient, invisible otherwise. I stand, boots crunching on the wet pavement, hands gripping the doorframe. She's smiling, hoodie half-zipped, backpack slung over one shoulder, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind my calm exterior. She's expecting me to move, to open the door, to perform the familiar ritual. I don't. I take a step back, letting her wait. The seconds stretch into minutes. I watch her shuffle from foot to foot, glance at her phone, mutter under her breath. The smile fades. Her shoulders slump slightly, the realization dawning that I am not here to serve her convenience anymore. For the first time, I see her as a teenager forced to confront the consequences of her own carelessness. Inside, I feel a mixture of triumph and guilt. I've crossed an invisible line, asserting my boundaries, reclaiming a sense of self that had been eroded by months of repeated invisibility. And yet, I can't help but worry. Will she hate me? Will the mother be upset? Is this cruelty, or is it justice in its quietest form? Minutes pass. I sit back at my desk pretending to type, watching her from the corner of my eye. She rings the doorbell again, a bit more insistently this time, and I still do nothing. She knocks softly, then a little harder, her youthful patience beginning to fray. The mother returns from her morning errands, groceries in hand. She sees her daughter at the door, and then notices me, standing by the window, unmoving. What's going on? She asks, surprise and confusion in her voice. She locked herself out, I say simply. Again, but I'm not opening it this time. Her eyes widen. You're not? No, I reply, voice calm but firm. I've helped enough. She needs to learn responsibility. She can't expect me to drop everything every time she forgets her keys. The mother hesitates, clearly torn between gratitude for my past help and concern for her daughter's feelings. I see the conflict on her face, the uncomfortable truth that sometimes children must face consequences, and that my patience has limits. The teenage girl bangs on the door lightly, pleading now, her voice rising. Please, I didn't mean to. I do not move. I feel a strange power in the stillness, a quiet assertion of my own boundaries. I feel human again, visible on my own terms, no longer a tool to be used at whim. Hours pass. She waits outside, rain beginning to fall, turning her hair into a soaked mess, dripping onto the concrete. I watch from inside, guilt gnawing at the edges of my conscience. The mother frowns, muttering apologies and scolding softly, finally letting her daughter in from the side door, the lock barely used, inside. The teenage girl's expression is a mixture of frustration, embarrassment, and confusion. She glances at me for the first time with genuine recognition, not for convenience, not for a request, but as if seeing me as a real person with limits. I watch silently, letting the lesson settle in. I realize then that this is a turning point. The repetition, the expectation, the invisibility, it all culminates in this moment of confrontation. And though it is uncomfortable, tense, and filled with subtle conflict, I feel a quiet sense of pride. I have set a boundary. I have taught a lesson in responsibility, even if it was not pleasant for anyone involved. Evening falls, and the house is quiet once more. The teenage girl has retreated to her room, probably texting her friends, probably replaying the morning over and over in her mind. The mother lingers in the kitchen, awkwardly apologetic, clearly processing the event herself. I sip my tea, feeling a mix of relief and lingering tension. This act of refusal, simple as it was, has shifted something fundamental. I am no longer merely the ever-ready helper. I am a person with limits, with boundaries, with the right to be acknowledged and respected. I can see it in the teenage girl's eyes. A seed of understanding has been planted. However grudgingly, I also understand something about myself. Kindness does not require invisibility. Helping others is noble, but not at the cost of erasing your own presence. And for the first time in months, I feel seen, not through gratitude, but through the recognition of my autonomy. As I close the blinds for the night, I know the lockouts will continue. The teenage girl will likely forget her keys again, but the pattern has changed. She will think twice. I will no longer be invisible. And in that, there is a quiet victory, a hard-earned lesson in empathy, patience, and the courage to stand firm even when it is uncomfortable.